midst of the madness. It's March, and this is Last Call, your source for the best college basketball information all the way through March. Caden, Colford, and Jake Helton. My bracket, best I've ever had. 99%, or I'm in the 99th percentile, I should say. Top one in the world is not too bad. Jake, how you feeling?
Yeah, well, unfortunately for me, definitely not in that same place. I think mine's at about 88, 89% right now. But one thing I will say I've realized is there's not as many upsets. That's one thing that we saw coming in. A lot of people predicting upsets, the double-digit McNeese State, really the only big upset that I can say that I saw coming. I think that McNeese State's a very good team. Clemson, a lot of people thought they were going to repeat, go back to the Elite Eight, but unfortunately for them, that's not going to happen, and unfortunately for my bracket, that did not happen.
It's always so tough to gauge in that week after the conference tournament and before the bracket gets going that you're trying to gauge the competition, who's going to do what, and it's tough to do. There's a reason that ESPN is willing to give $1 million to anyone who can find a perfect bracket, because the odds are in favor of ESPN in every scenario. That's probably never going to happen in our lifetime. Well, at least you would think. And Jake and I have taken it upon ourselves to split the bracket for you. And so how we're going to do this, I'm in control, have the expertise in the South and West, if you will. You took the right side of the bracket if you're looking at it on the paper format. We'll go ahead and start in the South, where the first matchup you're going to see is between Auburn and Michigan. Michigan coming out of the Big Ten, winning that conference. And so far, they surprised me to this point. But they have Auburn in front of them, number one, the last 6 weeks of the college basketball season. What do you see happening in this game, Jake?
Michigan's a very good defensive team. One thing I will say is they did a very good job guarding John Tonje from Wisconsin. He's a very solid guard, and I think that he would have been the reason that Wisconsin would have beat Alabama. Unfortunately, they didn't make it through BYU. But I look at this Michigan team, I see a lot of good things on defense. You got Danny Wolf down there playing big man. They got a dynamic duo down low in the post, and they've got a couple of guards that are really holding it together for them. So they present a solid case, but can they beat this Auburn team? I say no. This Auburn team is very, very talented. They make shots when they need to. They get up big, so they have the lead going into late game. This is a team that puts themselves in a position to win.
And I think you'd agree with me in saying that if Michigan plays the same game that they played a couple of days ago, they're not going to beat Auburn. They're not going to beat the number one team in the nation. And you're looking at Auburn, who had Pettiford 23 points off the bench. Baker Mazzara was 17 versus Creighton as they get a 12-point win there. This team had 42 points in the paint. And obviously Auburn, being as physical as they are, they're playing a Big Ten team known for its physicality. So I feel like rebounding is going to be huge in this game. The second chance points. And, I mean, who can get set up in their half court, develop their pace, develop their offense first? It'll be tough to see, but it's hard to go against Auburn.
And this is a Michigan team that was the most picked upset. UC San Diego was the most picked team to upset a higher seed, and, well, it was a very close game. Michigan had about a 20-point lead at some point in the second half, blew it. UC San Diego comes back. They come up just short. So this is a Michigan team that kind of has something to prove, I feel like. They've worked through a very tough Texas A&M team. I will say Josh Hubbard, he had a great game, 26 points. Or excuse me, not Josh Hubbard. I can't think of his name, but the dude on Texas A&M, he had a very, very solid game.
I got you.
And I think that you're looking at a team in Michigan that comes out of the Big Ten. The Big Ten's performed very well in the tournament thus far, a lot better than the SEC, some would say. So Michigan definitely has an opportunity, but like I said, I think this Auburn team is just too good to lose.
We look at their successes against the Aggies, and you see 17 assists. That's big, and you also see a 48-39 win in the rebounding column, which is everything that you're going to need heading into Auburn. But, you know, they didn't shoot the ball very well. And if you want to beat the number one team in all the land, you're going to have to play well on both sides of the ball. So that's what we're looking at for Auburn versus Michigan. We'll move to the second game on the South slate as we hop into Sweet 16 action. Number 2, Michigan State. They're playing number 6 seed Ole Miss. And I feel like this game could be really, really fun to watch. But I feel like there's a reason Michigan State is at the number 2 spot in this seeding. There's a reason Tom Izzo carries around the aura, if you will, that he does. And there's a reason this Michigan State team gets the respect that it has this season, and it's shown throughout this entire tournament.
One thing I will say, last night, watching Michigan State against New Mexico, they did struggle to close that one out a little bit. They were back and forth between a 15 to about a 5-point lead. It was that 10 plus or minus right there, back and forth through the last 10 minutes of the game. They obviously pulled away in that one. The Ole Miss game, very interesting to me. You look at that Iowa State team, they're missing their best player. So, yeah, I thought Ole Miss was going to win that one. This matchup against Michigan State, a lot tougher, especially in the guard category. You look at people like Jeremy Fears Jr. He is a very solid guard. If you've seen the block he had last night, electric. Got the entire bench off their feet. You also got Xavier Booker. He's coming out of Cathedral High School here in Indianapolis, so a native. I mean, Michigan State's a very, very talented team. I find it hard to believe that they would lose, but if they're going to lose anyone, it's going to be this Ole Miss squad.
Well, the thing about Ole Miss, in their last game against Iowa State, they lost the rebounding battle. For me, that is a huge red flag. That's hitting the panic button. If you cannot lose the rebounding game in March and expect to have reasonable success, especially against a team like Michigan State, who you know is going to kill you on the boards, who's a physical team, and they have wings like Trey Holloman, that can really hurt you on both ends of the ball. So if you're not efficient in your offense, and Michigan State's not going to allow you to get on the offensive board, so if you can't bring down the defensive ones, it's going to be a nightmare for you all night. In the instance that number 2 and number 1 meet in the Elite Eight, I see that very likely in Auburn-Michigan State.
Yeah, I agree. I think Auburn-Michigan State is the clear matchup, at least for me, up until this point. Both of those teams playing good at the right time. Michigan State did have a little bit of a hiccup in the Big Ten tournament, I will say. We'll call it a hiccup. But I think that they're a team that could potentially beat Auburn. However, when you look at Auburn and who they've had to face the Tennessees, they've had to face the Kentuckys, the Floridas. They've played the best of the best competition, in my opinion. I think that's prepared them for this point. Usually you don't see that number 1 seed in the entire tournament make it to that Final Four. They're usually the first one to lose, or at least they have been in the past couple of years. So for them to be able to come in, continue to play as strong as they have, it just puts that confidence back in it for me. I like Auburn, at least to go to the championship, if not win it. I think they have a very good chance. They do have a tall task in Florida in front of them.
So that's the South. We'll move to the right side of the bracket. In the East, those are your squads. Tell me about who's playing and what you're thinking.
Well, first off, looking back at the games, I think the biggest surprise for me has been BYU. They come out of that 6th spot. They were facing a team, a lot of people picked them to lose that game against VCU. That was one of the more picked upsets of all of the games. So for them to be able to make it out into the Sweet 16, I think that's good for them, but it's really because of their best player, Richie Saunders. He is an absolute dog. He's a kind of a forward guard type. He brings the ball up the court every single time, but he's got the size of a guard, which is about 6'5", 6'6", I'm pretty sure. He's averaging 22 points per game, 5.5 rebounds per game. Compared to his regular season, he was only averaging 16 and 4, so he stepped it up in the month of March. I look at this BYU team as the dark horse of this region. And
you know, they've proven that they can go shoot out with the best of them, right? Wisconsin, the Big Ten tournament, on fire from range, and then Wisconsin meets BYU in the tournament, and BYU shoots 12 for 26. That's a great shot from 3, 46% from deep. And when a team combines that with at least a solid defensive effort, it's not often that you're going to lose in March. So I do like BYU. For whatever reason, I do have them at this point currently. And playing Alabama here, in my bracket, BYU is supposed to win over Alabama at that. So we'll see. We'll see.
It's not a crazy pick, I will say, but you got to consider they gave up 89 points to Wisconsin, 37 to John Tonje of Wisconsin. He's a phenomenal player. I think that when you look at him and his play style, it's a little bit similar to Mark Sears of Alabama. So the problem with that when I look at that is how are they going to guard the guards of Alabama? The big matchup for me is going to be Mark Sears, and if Richie Saunders picks up that assignment, that's who picks up that assignment. It's going to be a tough day for him. On top of that, he's going to be guarded by one of the best defenders in the SEC, and Grant Nelson. This is a complete Alabama team. when you look back at their losses, it's because they shot the ball horrible. And I don't like to pick an inconsistent team in March Madness. I was saying that to everybody in here before we got started. However, this Alabama team, they've consistently shot the ball very well, and that's what's led them to these wins. Think about how many times they've scored over 100. Same thing with Florida. Those are the games that I look at and see, yeah, you gave up 90 points, but you were able to outscore them, play good enough defense, and that's what I'm looking for out of Alabama.
You know, you have these teams in college basketball that just have a certain play style, have a certain identity attached to that play style, and Alabama has always been known as a team where if you come out flat, they can blaze 30 on you, just like that. Formidable offense, as they are, they require the best game out of each and everybody. So what that means for BYU, it's going to be very, very matchup based, right? How do you slow down the guards of Alabama, as you mentioned? How do you force them to succeed in the half court? And then for Alabama, if you can get the ball into shooters' hands, if you get the ball to who you need to get the ball to, you're a tough team to beat.
Yeah, I mean, we saw what Grant Nelson could do against Auburn, the best team in this tournament. He absolutely posterized someone. But looking over at the other matchup, the some would say more interesting matchup, Caleb Love getting his 7th look. That's correct, 7th look at Duke University. He played them twice every year for North Carolina when he was there, and now he has played them once earlier in the season. Duke took home that game by double digits. Caleb Love only had 8 points. Let's talk about their performance last night. 29 points out of Caleb Love, shot some clutch free throws down the stretch. I thought they were going to blow it. They end up pulling it away. And honestly, I think that's for the best. If anybody's going to beat this Duke team, it's going to be Arizona. I will tell you right now, Oregon was going to get blown out by 30, and there was no doubt in my mind about that. If you put Biddle against Cooper Flagg, that is everything you can think of. Fried chicken, mac and cheese, mashed potatoes, everything. He's eating a 5-course meal.
Well, you know, I look at Arizona and I look at Duke, and you have two separate, I'll go back to that word of identities, right? Where we look at Arizona, you're built on your 5th-year senior in Caleb Love. Where Duke, you're seeing a lot of turnover, right? It's a system that has players in and out, and it's a different team every year. You never know what you're going to get out of Duke skill-wise, other than the fact that it's going to be good. But when we look at the tournament, and historically, experience means a lot. Experience means a lot. You can even go back to a couple Kentucky teams and say that with some more seniority on those teams, you see a lot deeper runs into tournaments. I feel like with Caleb Love's experience, not only just in the tournament, but at the national championship level back with UNC, that provides a great uplift for Arizona against Duke in this one.
I love experience, and I think you're absolutely right. Coach Cal just did an interview about that, or in his post-game interview, talked about how he would never start 5 freshmen in a national championship game again. That's what he did against UConn. They lost. Everyone knows that. The big thing for me, though, experience doesn't really matter when you have someone like Tyrese Proctor, who's hit 13 threes through 2 games. Mm-hmm. He hit 7 against the number 16 seed, which, okay, say what you will about that. Then he hit 6 against Baylor, a very good defensive team, and it was a back-and-forth game up until about, 15 minutes in the second half. Duke pulled away, and there was really no looking back. That's what I think they do in all of these games, really. I think that the Alabama game is going to be the toughest matchup for Duke just because they do have some guards that can get down and play some defense. But, Duke really had one of the easier paths into this tournament. You look at Houston, comparatively speaking, we'll get to them later. They have a pretty easy path. They had to go through Purdue, but that's not the toughest matchup for them. So right now, Duke is looking like they're going to get all the way to the Final Four pretty unscathed.
All right, we'll move now to the West, the bottom left part of your bracket, if you're looking at it on paper. First game on the slate is my game to watch, and that is 1 seed Florida taking on 4 seed Maryland. These two teams are so much fun to watch. Maryland just most recently winning on a buzzer beater not too long ago as Florida knocks down UConn. There's a lot to like from both of these teams, but Florida, I feel like, has one of the best players of the tournament in Walter Clayton Jr. He comes out with 23 last outing against UConn, and he had 13 points in the final 8 minutes. Florida was one of those teams that I turned them on in the first half, and I'm thinking, this is the 1 seed? This is the team that I picked to win the NCAA championship? But you can see that flip switch. And when that happened, it was a whole new game. Clayton took over the game. And when Florida is playing at their best, I don't see anybody knocking them off.
It's a tough matchup against Maryland. I think Derek Queens presents a pretty big challenge offensively and also defensively. He's a very solid guard. You also got Julian Reese, brother of Angel Reese. He had a double-double against Colorado State. And the thing I would like to look at is Maryland did not play their best game. Neither did Colorado State. Colorado State was 4 for 20-something from behind the three-point line before they hit that last one, the go-ahead three-pointer. So I think it was only right that Maryland won this game. You look at the March Madness gods and you're like, what are you doing right now? They don't deserve this win. You're looking at a higher seed, played a worse game. Somehow they find themselves in position to take the lead. But no, Derek Queen puts up a beautiful fadeaway shot, and it goes in. I mean, that's March Madness right there. That's what you look for. That's what you want to see when you're watching the game. So I was happy about that, but this Florida team is just, we said it, they might be the best team in this tournament right now.
And, we could go on and on about how good Florida looks, but a second matchup here to watch in the West. How about number 10, Arkansas, making its way to the Sweet 16 to play now number 3, Texas Tech. And this is coming off beating a Rick Pitino coach St. John's team who looked very, very good coming into the tournament. And Arkansas, a lot of people doubting them because of a couple players coming off of injury. Obviously, Coach Cal's first year, a roster that can be up or down at any given moment. But when you look at their defense, St. John's shot terrible the entire game. Absolutely terrible. 9% from 3 in the 20s from the field. And when you look at the athleticism that Arkansas has to give and provide in this game, they're one of those teams when they're at their best, when they're playing their brand of basketball and their scores have a good touch with the rock in their hands. This is a team that can score 5 deep. Anyone in that 5 can give you a bucket in any given moment, and that's what makes them scary. That's why a lot of teams are coming up on the bottom half of these games.
Well, a lot of people thought that adding Boogie Flan back into the equation might mess things up for Arkansas, but he has come in and just been that exactly what they needed. He's been a great guard for them. He's been able to bring the ball up the court, although I will say that DJ Wagner, he's been the main point guard for this team, and he's done a phenomenal job. You look back to the beginning of the season, He was turning the ball over at a pretty high rate. Now, handling the ball very well. Also, Carter Knox, brother of Kevin Knox, who played for Kentucky, but very, very good game. He had 15, 6 rebounds to go with that. I look at him as that role player that is too important to leave out of the game. You have to have him. He's almost more than a role player. I don't know that you would say a star, but if you don't have those 12, 13 points from him, I don't think you win.
Well, Texas Tech is the opponent there where they would win by 13 over Drake, but my argument is that they played a number 11 Drake and a number 14 UNC Wilmington, which is why I have number 10 Arkansas moving on. But that was the West. Jake, how are things looking in the Midwest?
Well, this is the one that I'm sure all of our fans wanted to hear from. Purdue making it to the Sweet 16. They were another one of the more picked upsets. High Point was a very strong team, but I did look at them. I watched their game against Winthrop in their conference championship. They didn't look that good, although that did not change my mind. I still picked High Point, unfortunately. But back to the bracket, Kentucky, Tennessee, they've looked great. I think that's the one takeaway from these first 2 games is they've really handled business. A lot of people were wondering, can Kentucky come in here after losing in the first round the past 2 years, shake it off? That's exactly what they've done, and they beat a really good Illinois team yet the other day. So you look at that matchup, that's my big matchup to watch. You got that 2-3 right there. Kentucky's a very solid team offensively, but Tennessee, Zakai Ziegler, he's that guy, and I know that Kenna's rooting for Tennessee, our graphics producer, one of our producers back there. I know that's her team, and she's wanting them to win pretty bad, and I'm going to have to go with them. I think that Tennessee is the better team. Obviously, Kentucky won the 2 matchups in the regular season, but the way that I've seen it, typically the team that loses twice finds a way to win that third time. I'd say third time's the charm for Tennessee. They're heading to the Elite 8.
You know what? You kind of made my argument for me. They had 2 matchups in the regular season. Kentucky takes them both. Number 3 is going to knock down number 2, as it seems. And that takes us to our Elite 8s. At this point, I'm not sure how different we might be As we take a look at mine to this point, you're going to have Auburn taking on Michigan State, BYU versus Duke, Florida versus Arkansas, and Houston versus Kentucky. And not only is this what I think is going to happen, this is absolutely what I want to happen. I think all of these games make for great basketball. And as we round out March, head into early April and championship season, this is going to be so much fun.
I agree. Those are pretty much exactly what I have, except instead of BYU, I have Alabama. I think this Alabama team is just a little bit too good to lose. And Houston, they've got an easy path in my opinion. Yes, Purdue is very good, but they're Big Ten basketball. I think that Big 12 basketball is just a different type. It's a different brand at this point. Houston, Kelvin Sampson, they have built one of the better programs, if not one of the best programs in college basketball right now. Ole Miss, my shocker, over Michigan State. I know I said that Michigan State was going to be a tough team to beat, but if anyone's going to do it, it's going to be Ole Miss. And then the rest of it kind of self-explanatory. I do have Texas Tech over Arkansas. I know that's a little different from yours. I don't know if Arkansas can continue to play at the level they've been playing at. We've seen, or at least I've seen watching them through the regular season, they'll go on a stretch of playing great basketball, and then it's that game that looks like nobody knows what they're doing. You might as well just be playing with a football.
You know what? That's the beauty of it. You never know. We're in March, and this is college basketball. They're playing for all the marbles here in the coming weeks, and we'll be on Last Call next week talking about the same thing, the Final Four, and who we think is going to win all of this. But as we come up next, we're going to stay in the basketball world and talk the worst NBA trades of all time on Last Call.
Good morning, Greyhounds.
Your weekly dose of Greyhound entertainment.
I think if you watch our team, they have fun. You know, they have fun playing.
There's so much that you can do to get the most out of yours.
Our alumni care deeply about the success of this university.
Come here. Watch Good Morning Greyhounds every Saturday at 9 a.m. Catch us on UAD TV's YouTube channel and Xfinity channel 1096.
Well, unless you've been under a rock, you've heard all of the hate heading Dallas's way after sending Luka to the Lakers. The Lakers enjoying a lot of success after the trade, while the Mavericks, well, pretty much the complete opposite. They have not been good at all. They've been dealing with injuries on top of injuries on top of injuries. There's been talk of forfeiting games, and that's brought up the question, is sending Luka to the Lakers the worst trade in NBA history? There's been some questionable nods looking back into recent years and way back. Jake, what do you think?
This is actually a little bit harder than I had originally thought. When I was looking through, I just started scrolling through Google, looking at the worst trades, top 10 this, top 10 that. And I fell on a couple that I think were close enough to us, one. And then two, they serve different purposes. So I have one, a draft trade, a draft night trade. I will go ahead and pop that one up. It's going to be the Kobe Bryant trade from Charlotte. I feel like this is just the worst value for value. This was straight up. This was before they did 7 first-round picks, 8 second-round picks, and a bag of chips for one player. This was just a one for one. Nobody else. I think it might have been a 3-team trade with the Nets, but this was pretty much a one-for-one player with Vlade Divac. And, I mean, he has averaged about a double-double, I think, for his career. So not bad, but you're talking about he's in the GOAT conversation.
He is for a lot of people.
You got Kobe Bryant in there. I feel like that is a horrible trade, and it really speaks for itself.
You know, one thing about the Lakers, though, they've had a front office since the NBA originated, right? They're fleecing teams left and right. This time they got the Hornets, most recently getting the Mavericks, and obviously they didn't have any input into the AD fall, right? And that's just tough luck for the Mavericks to an extent. But I kind of went the same direction as mine. And I was thinking about this trade way back when Kawhi's draft year, when the Pacers had the draft rights to Kawhi himself and would trade him away to San Antonio for the IUPUI grad and George Hill. And growing up in Indiana, I had no problem with George Hill. I'm not going to lie to anybody. George Hill was very good, honestly, a very good point guard, especially, you know, in those series against the Heat. I remember the Beat the Heat towels being everywhere. But at the same time, you miss out, Indiana did, on Kawhi Leonard, who would eventually bring a title to Toronto and have every team that he's been on since he's been drafted in a contender spot, whether that was San Antonio, whether it was the Clippers, whether it was Toronto at that point. And some context is needed. The Pacers didn't pick Kawhi for themselves. The trade was already established to send him to San Antonio. But still, it's a thought that you have as a Pacer fan, what could have been? Because you would have had Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. It would have been like the Clippers, but not a geriatric team. You know, it would have been athletic Paul George, an athletic Kawhi Leonard around a bunch of other great guys and Danny Granger. So much to think about.
Yeah, you also got to think about the front office, like you said, the team around them. I think it would have been a completely different scenario. You might have seen that team that lost to LeBron in that 4-0 sweep, might have been able to 4-0 sweep LeBron back in, I don't know if that's 2016, 2017, something like that. But the other trade that I was looking at, I didn't realize that the Clippers had traded Shai Gilgeous-Alexander for Paul George. I didn't realize that was a part of that trade until I was looking at it last night. That is absolutely ridiculous. Not only Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, 7 first-round picks.
Yeah,
7.
I remember that.
They're
That
still
was
using
insane.
those.
Just,
Crazy.
they threw everything in the kitchen sink at LA. And it's insane to think about now because Shai just being the bag of chips in that scenario and now being a close front runner to MVP right behind Jokic, it's insane, absolutely insane. And obviously Oklahoma City, their GM and Sam Presti and their front office has come to be one of the greatest in, well, I kind of want to say sports history if it pans out. It has to pan out first, but it looks like it's well on their way there. You talk about the draft capital, you talk about the young talent, you talk about trades that they've made in just the past couple seasons, the free agent pickups. Isaiah Hartenstein, the past season, this team's looking great, and it all goes back to moves like this.
Yeah, and then you also had Danilo Gallinari in there. I feel like that was the bag of chips over Shai, looking back on it, but some context around it, I do want to say this was the same offseason they brought in Kawhi Leonard, so you're going for that all-or-nothing mentality if you are the Clippers, and I think that's exactly what the Mavs do. You get caught being greedy, so to speak, and you try and bring in everyone in the same time. Just doesn't always work out, and unfortunately for the Clippers, it did not work. And for me, the way that Shai has turned out for OKC is just one of the worst trades ever.
You know, you win some and you lose some. Both of us know that very well as we head into the primetime pick. 5 games on the slate this next week in the NBA. Jake and I to pick a couple winners, and by the end of the season, our season here in about 5 weeks or so, at the end of the semester, we'll see who knows ball a little better. First one up here, Thunder versus Sacramento. And as we look at these two teams, you know, it's not some bad names on Sacramento. They're okay, but they're no Thunder, right? They're no Thunder at all.
Yeah, no Thunder indeed. I got the Thunder as well. They beat Sacramento by 30 earlier in the season back in February. I really don't see a way that the Kings, I mean, if Zach LaVine has one of those 80-point games that he has every once in a while,
you never know.
Then maybe, but I don't see that happening. Just the way that the Thunder play defense, just too good.
Now it's the Warriors going to South Beach to play the Miami Heat. Miami, they've been atrocious as of late, but they broke their losing streak. Do they get back on the right track?
No. I think this is Jimmy Butler's first game back against them, assuming he does play. He's looking for some revenge, especially considering he didn't even – I mean, I would argue that he did not play for the first half of the season. He just kind of stood around and did what he had to do to not get fined, still got fined, didn't matter. I got Jimmy Butler, revenge game.
I'm in the same boat. We look at Jimmy Butler, and what makes him great is his competitive drive, and he has never exactly had a blissful end to any stint of his career. Miami, no different, and I picked the Warriors as well. But how about those headshots right there? Looking professional, Jake. We're moving up in the world. The Lakers are coming to Indianapolis to play the Pacers. And while I have a love-hate relationship with the Pacers, we just talked about the success that the Lakers were having, and matchup-wise, I think the Lakers could score 170. in this game if they really wanted to in this win.
We might go 5 for 5 today. I felt like these were pretty obvious picks. I'm going to go with the Lakers as well. LeBron, I believe he's getting back this week. He'll be back for that matchup. So that's a pretty easy matchup for me. I got the Lakers.
Now, Boston at Phoenix. And there's names all over the place. Big-time players all over the floor as we move into this game. However, it is in Phoenix. Does that change anything?
No, I don't think so, and that's something you'll notice. I picked all the away teams today.
No way!
I think we did the same thing. I started to notice as soon as we started to pick, we both definitely picked the same thing, all away games. KD had his one game of the month where he scored 30-something points, and that's what it is. It's one game a month. Every month it happens. It's already done, so give me the Celtics. Devin
Booker was just talking about he's been on teams with more talent that have won more, and him coming out to say that just tells me that there's a lot of dysfunction, a lot of disorganization in the entire program overall. So it's tough for me to side with the Suns in this scenario, so I'm with you and Boston. And finally, New York Knicks playing the Milwaukee Bucks. And if you're asking me personally, Knicks have been excellent against the Bucks this season. They've won with 20-plus margins the last 2 times these teams have played, and it's because the matchups just favor the Knicks, and that's where my head's at right now.
I feel like you were sitting over my shoulder when I was doing my notes because pretty much same exact reason. I will say, though, both of these teams have the Knicks have almost fallen. The Bucks have fallen below the Pacers in the conference race. So this is almost a must-win game for both teams. I feel like getting back on track, especially heading into the postseason. Got less than 15 games left for both sides. Both really need it, but Knicks, they're going to take it. Cat, I am loving the way he's playing right now. He's been that 3-and-D guy, which he wasn't always for Minnesota. I think that's what he needed to be, and now the Knicks are really utilizing him to his fullest potential.
And I feel like the Knicks are really making that move for him to be the guy. But you say, you lose some, you win some. I'm making my way back, and you know it. And you should probably be happy that we went even with these 5 picks here today. So the record.
You want to change it? I'll give you a change. Remember what happened last time?
All right, fine. You give me a change, huh?
Yep, we'll see.
Give me the Pacers. Give me the Pacers beating Los Angeles at home.
Fair enough.
Miles Turner masterclass.
You know what? Double switch. I'll take the Heat. I'll take the Heat over the Warriors. You know what?
All right,
Jimmy Butler ain't got nothing.
Somebody write it down because somebody's going to forget, But just know that I've made my way back within one game. I was down to 3 or 4 at one point, so it might be scary here in the coming weeks.
All right, we'll see.
We'll see. This has been Last Call. And remember, as long as March Madness is here, so will we. So make sure to follow us on YouTube and catch us on Xfinity Channel 1096 at 6 p.m. every Monday. With that being said, Caden, Colford, Jake Helton, this is Last Call.